Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Desert Heat Sports Podcast. I am your host, Colin Altmeyer, and I will like to welcome you to a new and hopefully fresh take on sports. In this podcast, I will mainly cover football, basketball, UFC, but I'll also give my take on any sports news that's in the world that day. Um, to give an intro on myself, I'm a lifelong sports fan. Football, basketball, UFC, you name it. A former football player and currently training in Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu as my new sports realm. Outside of that, you know, I played a little basketball like everyone has, you know how it goes. But today on the show, I'd like to first cover UFC 221, which just happened tonight as I'm recording this. Yoel Romero versus Luke Rockhold ended in a third round TKO by Yoel Romero. He hit him with a with a pretty mean uppercut to follow up an overhand left that knocked out Luke Rockhold. And honestly, I think uh, it was a pretty good fight. In the beginning, Yoel was taking shots. He was getting jabbed up most of the night before he found his way in the second round. In the second round, he was coming in bursts, and in the third round, he finally connected in during one of those bursts, and that's what that's what really took Luke out of there. I like both fighters. Yoel is probably one of my favorites in the middleweight division. I think he's got a lot of promise, even though he's old. Um, I think he is a really good fighter. I like his wrestling background. I like his striking. There's a lot to like about him, and I do. I think hopefully they'll put him against Robert Whitaker in the upcoming months when Robert Whitaker is healed. You have to remember this fight was supposed to be Robert Whitaker versus Luke Rockhold, but Robert Whitaker had to pull out because he had some kind of staph infection and it spread into some of his organs, and there was some other stuff going on. So hopefully he recovers soon. He put out an update on himself saying that he's starting to feel better, and hopefully he does because he's a really fun fighter to watch. And watching Yoel versus Luke Rockhold 2 would be or Yoel versus Robert Whitaker 2 would be a fun fight to watch. Outside of that fight, the co-main event, Curtis Blades versus Mark Hunt, nothing nothing too exciting there. Curtis Blades got rocked a little bit in the first by Mark Hunt, but came back and took him down something like 10 times and kind of just beat Mark Hunt down. It really looked like a remake of the Brock Lesnar Mark Hunt fight with less bashing of Mark Hunt. It's not to say that Curtis Blades isn't as good as Brock Lesnar, which probably isn't true. Curtis Blades is probably a lot better than Brock Lesnar overall, but the strength aspect, I think Brock's got him beat pretty handily in that. The fight before that I was really excited for was Tai Tuivasa. He's a Polynesian guy. He's from Australia, I'm pretty sure. Um, there's a lot to like about those heavyweights, you know. Crazy power, crazy jaws. It's a fun fight. He fought French guy, I forget his name, but he put it to him. Knocked him out in the first round. I was surprised he was still standing. He was taking tons of shots. It it was pretty crazy. Those poly fighters, him, Mark Hunt, guys like that, they're cool. I like guys like that. So fun to watch. Outside of that, I'd say who stood out to me the most was uh, Israel Adesanya. He I had not heard about him before the night tonight, so shows how much I know. Even though I like to think of myself as a UFC connoisseur, I guess you would say. Um, I hadn't heard about him before, and he really, really impressed me. His striking was very, very good. His takedown defense, for somebody who's supposed to be, from what they were saying, a main striker, the takedown defense was very good. I like that fight a lot. I think he's got some good upcoming fights for him. I'm excited to see more of that. So that was just a quick recap of UFC 221. And now I think I'm going to get into some upcoming fights I want to see. Uh, Obviously, Yoel Romero versus Robert Whitaker 2 is on the top of that list. I think the first matchup was really, really good. Going into that final round, it was 2-2, winner takes all final round, and Robert Whitaker manned up. He manned up. He did not give up, even though his knee was completely destroyed by Yoel in the first or second round, and I really really like that. They are two tough guys, and I don't think there's much more like a matchup like that could give you. That it lived up to the hype. Other upcoming fights: DC versus Stipe. That fight will be awesome. Love both of those guys. DC is such a cool guy. I think he finally won over the fans really. Um, After his last few performances, UFC 200 after that I think is when he turned the corner. UFC 200 was his lowest point though, I think. Even lower than losing to John Jones, to be honest, because he took down Anderson Silva, took the fight on 2 days' notice, and he just kept taking him down, and it really didn't go over well with the fans. That was honestly his lowest point. But ever since then, it's been nothing but up. People really see how cool of a guy he is, and honestly, I'm happy for him because I like him. I think he tries to rip the heel promos like the WWE heel promos. He tries to, but he's not a guy like that. He's a good guy. Um, Stipe, another good guy. He was really mad after his fight with Ngannou because he was being written off by basically everybody, even Dana White to a certain extent. And I don't blame him for being mad. You got to keep in mind though, Ngannou, he's a kind of crazy prospect, and guys like that don't come around often. I think he kind of got exposed a little bit with his takedown defense. He mostly just relied on being strong. And from what I've heard and read, they said that he didn't even practice takedown defense. Like he thought he was just gonna walk through Stipe like he did to everyone else. And Stipe's a guy he proves people wrong. Like if you ever listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, when he has Joey Diaz come on, they always talk about Stipe, and Joey Diaz goes on about the immigrant mentality. He goes, "Oh, Joe, the immigrant mentality. He's got it." And and uh, and you know what? I think it might be true, even though he wasn't an immigrant. His parents were. I think it still stands. He does have he's got that tough gene. He does not give up. Um, Really really cool guy, tough fighter. I think this fight is gonna be good for many reasons. I think I should learn by now to stop picking against Stipe, but I'm gonna have to do it at least one more time because I'm gonna take DC. I think DC's wrestling ability is it's above Stipe's. Maybe not by a lot, but at least a little. And I think their striking is on a similar level. Um, Now, one thing to watch out for, which will be interesting to look at during the fight, is going to be to see how DC's power matches up against Stipe, because Stipe has taken some shots before. So he knows what it's like to get hit by a real heavyweight, real big guys. So I wonder what DC's power is going to bring to Stipe. I wonder if he'll really be able to even affect him that much. Obviously, he's getting punched, so it's going to hurt, but how it'll affect him compared to other fights he's had, well, will be really, really interesting. I also wonder if Stipe will be able to handle him on the ground once DC gets him down, because all I think about when I think about DC at heavyweight is him picking up Derek Barnett over his head and throwing him down. It's just he is a very special dude, very good fighter. Next fight I like to think about. I think uh, Demetrius Johnson versus T.J. Dillashaw. I think that's happening. I'm not 100% sure if it's confirmed yet, but that would be a good fight. It really is the next fight. If TJ Dillashaw can get down to 125, that'll be a real challenge for DJ. DJ did fight Dominic Cruz earlier in his career and lost, but I don't think TJ really has the size that Dominic Cruz has, which is one of the main reasons that Dominic Cruz was able to beat DJ. Now, TJ is a little bit bigger, obviously, but not by as much as Dominic Cruz is, and I think that Demetrius Johnson's skill will be able to overcome that smaller height differential and reach advantage. Um, DJ versus TJ is it would be a double belt for TJ, which honestly I kind of want to see DJ go up because I want to see him have two belts. I think he deserves it, but then again, at a higher weight for DJ and a lower higher weight for DJ would be tougher for him. So I think his best move is to stay at 125. Although having two belts would be cool for him. He already broke the record, so adding another one to the list of a bigger guy, I think that would just add to his legacy, really. Next thing, next fight I want to talk about isn't really a fight, just a fighter, is John Jones. I was watching some videos, reading some articles, and Dana White's saying that John Jones, Conor McGregor, and Brock Lesnar will all fight this year. Now, I'd say two of the three are true. I like to believe two of the three are true. You can never take three of three. 100% is very hard to come by when people are talking, because especially Dana White. Sometimes he likes to put a bow on things. He likes to hype things up more than they are because he's a promoter. That's what he does. I do think that McGregor and John Jones will be back. I'm not too sure about Brock Lesnar now. The thing about Brock Lesnar is it, you can watch WWE to get a cue on if he's going to come back. And what I mean by this is in the upcoming months, there's the Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. Now, if he loses his title at either the Elimination Chamber, I don't think he's wrestling at the Elimination Chamber actually. If he loses his title at WrestleMania, then I think that goes to show that he's probably taking a step closer to go back to the UFC for at least a couple more fights. I think he would do pretty good. I mean, there's some people obviously Stipe would take his head off. Kane, obviously, Alistair would be a good rematch because now I think they're both at a similar level because the last time they fought, Alistair Overeem was Alistair Ubereem. He was on so many steroids. He was he was on the maximum amount that a person can take. He was crazy. Uh, I think I think that matchup would be good to see how Alistair, especially with his chin nowadays, it's degraded even more. So it would be really interesting to see what a fight between them would look like this time around. Another fight that would be cool, Maybe, as I said before, Curtis Blades, that might be interesting. There's not many other fights. Some people like to say Ngannou versus Brock, and I don't know if I'd want to see Brock hurt like that. I don't think that Ngannou would be messing around too much. I think he'd just put Brock away, and it'd be sad because I like Brock a lot. Um, as for John Jones, I think that he will come back because, from what people have been saying, Dirk, Dirk Nowitzki, Nowitzki, I forget his first name, Jeff Nowitzki, that's what his name is, was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he's the head of USADA, which is the drug testing agency that the UFC uses, and he said that it's more than likely that John Jones didn't take any steroids intentionally because it only came up in one test. They test him multiple times, and to have it only come up in one of the tests is really, really fishy. So either he was doing a really good job at masking it, which could be detected in other samples, so it's really hard to tell if that's what he was doing. But another thing that's more likely is he either a theory that they came up with, Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub came up with on his podcast. They said that uh, the he likes to party and he's still doing cocaine, and he got cocaine from somebody who cut the cocaine with creatine, which came from a dirty factory. And that's kind of an out there idea, but it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like John Jones gets himself into a bunch of situations that he doesn't need to be in, and when you do that, it really gives you bad luck. It really does. Um, but the other theory I think it could be is somebody tried to sabotage him, which could be more likely, in all honesty. Sabotage. I mean, he's got to look at who's around him, see who could have done something. I hope he comes out of this soon. He's such a fun fighter to watch. Could be the best of all time. We don't know because he hasn't fought in like consistently in the past few years, which is sad because he's cool guy, great fighter. Just needs to stop messing up. He needs to get some better people around him to help him out. And lastly, Conor McGregor. Man, oh man, do I hope Conor McGregor comes back to fight. I've been waiting. The Floyd Mayweather thing, yeah, that was cool. All right, it was fun for a while, a fun thing to do. The $100 million fight, yada yada. Came in, won the first 4 rounds. Some say could have won the first six. I'd say the first four easily. Maybe I'd give him the fifth. I don't know. Um, but I think hopefully he'll come back at the end of this year or closer to the end of this year to fight the winner of Khabib versus Tony, which I think will be really good. Honestly, I don't know that either of those guys, they obviously pose a big threat, but I don't know if either of them have the skill to be able to beat him. People keep underrating Conor McGregor for some reason because he hasn't fought in a long time. It's honestly recency bias. They say, oh, this Tony's kicks, Tony's ground game, all this. But if you've been watching his past few fights, Eddie Alvarez couldn't take him down. Nate Diaz, the second fight, couldn't take him down. The one thing he does have to work on is his cardio, but both of those guys, Khabib and Tony, they get hit a lot. If you watch Tony Ferguson's fight he had after his first fight after coming back from injury, he fought Lando Venata in Lando Venata's debut UFC fight, and he was almost knocked out by Lando Venata. Lando Venata was bringing it to him, and then Lando Venata started to do the Lando Venata I don't like to cover my face when I'm throwing punches, and got knocked out. He does that every fight. He's got such high potential, Lando Venata, but he does not like to do defense. Doesn't like to do it for some reason. and it's really screwed him over in his past few fights, and especially against Tony Ferguson, which would have been a huge win for him. But as I was saying, he gets hit. Tony Ferguson gets hit. Khabib gets hit too. He doesn't have great head movement. Sure, he's really good at taking down, and I guarantee he'd be able to take down McGregor because his strength, from what they say, is on another level. I believe it. Thing is, though, will he be able to get in on McGregor? I don't know. I don't think he would be able to. Connor's punches, the just the way he fights, really. Since his first fight with Nate Diaz, I don't think that he's been taken down easily. The second fight wasn't he wasn't taken down until the end of the fight, and he really wasn't even on his back that long. He was kind of on his butt against the cage, about to get up. And then against Eddie Alvarez, everybody was saying the whole leading up to it all the way. They're like, oh, can he stop the takedown? Can he stop the takedown? Then he pieces him up, stops all the takedowns, and people say, oh, well, he didn't really show his takedown defense. Yes, he did show his takedown defense. You know what? A good offense can be a defense. And that's something I don't think a lot of people understand. I don't think they'd take down Conor McGregor that easily. He's been working on it. Conor McGregor he's got such a good mind for the game. He knows when he has to work on his weaknesses. You saw after the first time he lost to Nate Diaz, he was humble. He knew he had to get back in there and bring something new to the table, which he did. He improved his takedown defense a ton. And I don't know if either of those guys would be able to take him down. I think McGregor would knock both of them out. And I don't know if it would be able to go into the later rounds. It might be. It might be. But I doubt it. I'd say Khabib would end in the second. The Tony Ferguson, he's tough. It would probably go third or fourth, but I don't see either of them lasting that long with McGregor. Uh, so I hope after that that Tony Ferguson Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, they book the McGregor versus the winner fight, because that's something I want to see, and that's something everyone else wants to see. And you know what? After that, in fact, after that, I kind of want to see, after he defends it, hopefully Max Holloway still holds the belt. Conor McGregor go back down to 145 and challenge Max Holloway. McGregor versus Holloway 2 would be a very cool fight. Since they last fought, they have improved a ton. And it's been said, everybody knows it, McGregor had a torn ACL during the first fight, but I still don't think that takes away from either of their skill. McGregor's a tough guy, Holloway's a tough guy, and they can both throw hands. I really want to see that fight too. So my top two fights for Conor McGregor have to be: one, McGregor versus the winner of the interim lightweight champion; two, McGregor versus Holloway for another double belt situation, hopefully. For John Jones, I just hope he makes it back. That's that's all I hope for. And then Brock Lesnar sounds kind of like a pipe dream, but we can see who what happens once he comes, if he comes back. Next, I'd like to talk about the NBA trade deadline. How crazy was that? Not really. It was crazy if you're a Cavs fan. Other than that, people were just, it was bench players for second round picks mostly. Um, but I do really, really think that Cleveland became a much better team from the trade deadline. They got a lot younger, a lot more athletic, and people don't want to say it, but a lot better defensively. And I'll put it this way: players who played at least a minimum of 20 minutes per game and played at least 15 games, which is a standard I had to set because Isaiah Thomas only played 15 games. But the players who have only played at least 20 minutes per game and at least 15 games: Isaiah Thomas, worst rating, 118.6. Jay Crowder, fourth worst rating, 113.1. Shumpert and Channing Frye didn't qualify, Mostly Shumpert was hurt. Channing Frye just hasn't been playing this year. He's not that bad of a player. He's known as an offensive guy, so I wouldn't blame him if his defensive rating was bad because they wouldn't use him like that. Dwayne Wade, he on the other hand did have a pretty good defensive rating. He was playing good defensively this year, but he didn't really fit with the Cavs. So them trading him, it doesn't worry me that much. Who they get in return, they get George Hill, who's been known as a good defender. And even though this year his defensive rating has been pretty poor at a 112.9, I think it has more to do with the quality of his team and how bad the rest of his team is at defense. They are very, very bad. De'Aaron Fox doesn't play defense. Zach Randolph is so old. Everybody on that team just does not play defense. They need to configure that team better in the future if they want to do anything. Um, but he's been known as a good defensive player. So I know that once he gets around other talent and other people who can guard, his rating will definitely go down. And in this statistic, higher numbers are bad, lower numbers are good. So Rodney Hood, second player they got, rating of 107.2. Now that's not world beating by any means, but it's a decent stat. I think same again as George Hill. I think once you get higher quality players around you, uh, it'll be easier to defend. Um, the Utah Jazz this year, they haven't had Rudy Gobert, which is the Jazz's best defender, but they still have had Joe Ingles and Donovan Mitchell, who he's a really good scorer. I don't know about on defense, and Ricky Rubio, who hasn't he's pretty good on defense, not great. So you can see how his rating might go down. Utah as a defensive team is pretty good though, so I think that stat holds true more so than George Hill's stat. Um, the next piece they get, Larry Nance, is a really big upgrade. I think helps them a lot. They have another defender who like another big man defender, put it that way. He had a 103.5 defensive rating, which is one of the best in the league so far this year. And Jordan Clarkson, who people want to say he's not a good defender, but on a pretty poor Lakers team, his defensive rating is a 104.2, which that's a lot better than people have been giving him credit for, and I think that he'll actually help the Cavs a lot. His scoring off the bench, his defense, if they put him in the right rotation, in the right lineup sets, I think he could be a quality starter and even an effective defensive player. Now, a lot of people have been saying recently that the Cavs, they lost a lot of experience and that'll really come back to bite them in the playoffs. And I don't know if I completely buy it. Mainly because they have LeBron James, who's the most experienced player in the NBA at this point. He's been to 8 finals. He's going for his 8th straight now. I don't buy it because these guys they got are young and they haven't been to the playoffs yet. And a lot of them. George Hill has. He's not as young, but the other 3 guys they got, young players. And I think they'll bring a lot more energy and they'll give a lot. They'll care a lot more. Put it that way. They'll give a lot more effort. And I think that'll matter a lot, especially in the regular season when they're trying to get a higher seed, because these guys will be fighting to get something they haven't gotten before. And I think that's really important for a team. In the playoffs, a lot of the Cavs players, you could say they've been nonchalant about wanting to try on defense and a lot of the other stuff. And I think that's something the new players won't do. When you're in a new situation, I think it's a lot easier to care more because it's something you haven't done for and it's something new that you want to achieve. When you're players like J.R. Smith, he comes to mind when you think of a player who doesn't really care that much. I don't think he cares. It seems like he's fallen off a cliff. He is so bad. This year he has been plain awful. And I'm really honestly surprised they didn't trade him. The only reason I think that they didn't trade him is because nobody would take him. That's how bad he is. In his contract, don't even get me started on this contract. The contract to go with it, just terrible. Tristan Thompson could be similar. I don't know if it's as bad as J.R. Smith with his contract. It's both of them are bad. I think I'd rank J.R. Smith's a little bit worse. At least J.R. Smith's ends soon, I guess you could say. Tristan Thompson's goes on for 3 more years. Both of those deals were very, very bad. I was hoping that the Cavs would be able to trade him at the deadline to get more of a competition in the finals. I think now they have a pretty good chance. I don't know if they have enough to beat him, but I think they can beat him, whereas before I did not think they had a chance at all to beat them. I think it's a good possibility that they will be able to beat the Warriors, or, as I like to think, the Rockets. I think the Rockets are, in the Western Conference, the best team. They're playing very, very well together. The players they have so much defense. They have so much 3 shooting. They have become maybe a better version of the Warriors. I think James Harden and Chris Paul, they lock down the guard. Chris Paul locks down one of their main backcourt options every game. I think I really like the Rockets. I think that they will go deep, if not to the finals, win the finals. That's how good I think they are. And another team to watch out for, I think, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they're a team, they just play to their competition. People think they're up and down. It's because they are. They play to their competition. They're like that high school team who thinks that they're too good to try, and they go across town into this bad team's stadium, and they think, oh, we're gonna run over them. We didn't have to try at practice all week, yada yada. They go in and they start to lose, and at halftime they go in and they're like, oh wow, we have to turn it on. Except the Thunder don't turn it on against bad teams at all. Maybe they're just trying to coast. Maybe they know they'll make the playoffs. I don't know. But whenever you see them play a high caliber team, they play well, which I think is important and shows what could be in store for them in the playoffs. I'm just looking forward to the Western Conference playoffs in general. I think there are some good teams in there, and I think there'll be some good matchups to look forward to. Outside of the Rockets and the Warriors, and a little bit of the Thunder, I don't see anybody else coming out of the West. That's just me, though. Next, I want to talk about the Super Bowl. Obviously, it was a little bit ago. It was a while ago. But football is my true love. I love football. I can't get enough of football. If you showed football to me every day for every day of the year, I would watch it. And I would enjoy it too. That's how much I like football. To be specific, and I'll send out my bias now. I'm a lifelong Packers fan, so whenever in the show we're talking about football, there will probably be a Packers bias, but I'll try to keep it under wraps for any of the takes I give. As for the Super Bowl, though, I thought that game was, people were saying best ever. I don't think it's best ever. Bias aside, I think the Packers Super Bowl against the Steelers was a little bit better because it had that good blend of offense and defense, whereas this Super Bowl was just offense. I think both sides of the game are important, and when you're able to put them both together like the Packers and Steelers did, it's I think more fun to watch for a football purist. From a straight fun standpoint, I guess you could say this one was better because people like seeing touchdowns. So I guess that's how some people could see it. I don't see it that way. However, I think good blends of offense and defense and even special teams, I think that's a lot more fun and better football than what we saw in this Super Bowl. But the Patriots' problem this year, honestly, on defense, it's what you saw, exactly what you saw last Super Bowl. Their defense is too slow. They have a lot of guys, they have a lot of quality players, but they have no guys who are all that fast. I mean, they have Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore is fast. Outside of him, no one's really fast. Without Donta Hightower, their defense is pretty rough. They didn't have that great of a pass rush, and surprisingly, Malcolm Brown was getting moved. He was getting beat almost every run play, and it was pretty sad. They need to address the D-line if they want to get back there, which I think they'll do, because Belichick is one of, if not the greatest coach of all time, and they'll make changes. I don't buy into this Brady Belichick Kraft fight. I just don't buy into it. It may be sourced and all this stuff, but I don't know. If it was true, somebody would be gone. I don't think they'd be putting up with it this long. They're grown now. I do not buy into that. The next problem the Patriots had was poor tackling. How could you tackle that bad? It was pretty bad. I remember one play that sticks in my brain the most was Jonathan Batamosi. It was one of the worst arm tackle attempts of all time. He got shucked to the ground. It was really sad. I don't know if they could have... I guess they could have tackled worse. They just could have not tackled at all. But the tackling effort they gave out in that game was terrible. Terrible to say the least. I do not think you can win a playoff game even if you tackle like that. And I think that just goes to show the greatness of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They almost overcame defense, not tackling, which is funny to think about because all the other Super Bowls they've had, their defense has been able to make stops. And in this one, they didn't. They made one. They made them punt once. They converted 2 fourth downs, I think, and countless third down conversions. That's what killed them. You can't let them. 2 fourth down conversions, you can't let a team do that and expect to win. It just will not happen. As for the Eagles, they played great. Their team is so good. I think they have one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line. They have one of the best defensive lines. Pass rushing, I don't know so much about run, but pass rushing, they have Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett, they had Chris Long, they had... Who else did they have? They just have a ton of players, man. And when you can rush the passer like that, it's hard to lose. Not to mention their corners. I think their corners are a little underrated, even though they got torched by Brady. They have Sidney Jones. He's pretty good. I don't know that he played all that much, but I think their corners are pretty good for the future. Their safeties, good. Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod, top-notch safeties. Outside of that, Nick Foles, he did what he does. He was deadly accurate. I mean, some of those passes he was making, you would have thought Brady put on the other uniform and went out there and just decided to throw some of those passes. They were nice. That pass to Corey Clement in the end zone, most quarterbacks can't make that, bro. That was nice. Clutch performance. Hats off to Nick Foles. Going forward the next year, I hope that the Eagles can keep a lot of those guys together because it'll be fun to see what they can do with Carson Wentz because I think Carson Wentz is a good amount better than Nick Foles, although the gap may be closer than a lot of people like to think. because I don't know that you can be a chump and put on a performance like he did throughout the playoffs. His performance was really surprising too, honestly, because you see what he did against the Cowboys, getting shut out. That was tragic. It was a tragic performance, honestly, and I would have been sick if I was an Eagles fan going into the playoffs, especially. And you know what? Even that first game against the Falcons, I don't think he played all that well, and they still won, and they got lucky. I don't know that they got lucky, but Nick Foles caught on fire, and that's what pushed them to the Super Bowl. And I really think that team is filled with good guys, and I like their team. Their overall team is easily the best in the NFL, best roster in the NFL by far. Hopefully they can keep them together for Carson Wentz. That will be fun to see. Outside of the Super Bowl, though, the draft and free agency are coming up soon. Big question is, where will Kirk Cousins go? Hopefully Kirk Cousins, I want to see him either in Arizona with the Cardinals or in Denver with the Broncos. I do not want to see him on the Jaguars. I don't know why. He'd probably fit in really well there. They have some playmakers. They have Leonard Fournette. They have some good young receivers. They have a better front office than they had before. Tom Coughlin, he always does a good job anywhere he goes. I'd just rather see him, I don't know, I'd just rather see him with the Cardinals or the Broncos, to be honest. The Broncos, though, they may go with Baker Mayfield in the draft, which I think would be really interesting. I think Baker Mayfield needs the right system to be good in the NFL. I don't think he will be very good on the Browns. I think he's a really good player, don't get me wrong, but I think he needs the right system to succeed. Similarly to Dak Prescott in his first year, I don't know that he would have done well in a different system without a good running back, without an offensive-minded coach. I do not think he would have done well, or as well as he did. And I think the same can be said for Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield, in the right system, with the right pieces around them, would be a very good player. And in Denver, I think he'd get that. The offensive line isn't horrible. They just have to stay healthy. They have good receivers, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas. They can always pick up a tight end running back in the draft. I don't think those are too big of a deal. And for the Cardinals, I think they're similarly good on offense. Their offensive line is old, so they get beat sometimes and give up a lot of pressure, and they get hurt. But I think if they supplement their offensive line in the draft, I think that could help. They have David Johnson at running back, Fitzgerald. If he stays another year, I think he'd be good for Baker Mayfield. I think John Brown, he'd be a good option. Baker Mayfield likes to hit the deep ball. You can see that in the playoff when they should have beat Georgia. They really should have. That was a major botch in the playoffs by their coach. I don't know how they didn't go for it on fourth down. That was just a ridiculous play call. But Baker Mayfield, hope he goes to a good team, a team with a good system. A team like the Browns, the Jets, I don't see a good future if that happens. Buffalo, maybe with Buffalo, maybe he'll play well. It's a possibility. I think the Broncos and the Cardinals are good landing spots for him. The Jaguars even, but I doubt he'll fall that far. So thinking of teams in the top of the order in the draft, I think most likely the suitors for him will be either the Cardinals, the Jets, or the Broncos. Now for draft predictions, the Packers. Got to get into my Packers. Hopefully in the draft, they select a pass rusher on defense. depending on who's there. I know they'll probably go for best player available like they usually do, which I don't see how they could go wrong, honestly. They got a new defensive coordinator and a new offensive coordinator who's not really new, but hasn't been their coach the past few years. Joe Philbin, he was there when Rodgers won his first MVP, and he's back now. And their defensive coordinator, finally, they fired Dom Capers. Oh, it's been years in the making. Dom Capers' defense is it was so bad. One good year out of, was he there, 9? 1 out of 9 good years? And they thought that was acceptable for Aaron Rodgers. Not acceptable. Mike Pettin, his past, if his past is any indicator of the future, we're in for something good. I think he's a good defensive mind, looking at what he's done in the past, and his best defense with the Jets. I mean, there were no world beaters on that team. I mean, they had some really good players on there, but it wasn't like they had great talent overall, like on the Broncos team or on the Seahawks Legion of Boom team, or any of those great defenses. And that team was really good. They stopped the pass, and which is something the Packers haven't been able to do. And I think it's something they will be able to do in the future. I think Demarius Randall and Kevin King, I think if you put them in the right situations, they're a lot better corners than people give them credit for. Demarius Randall, he showed flashes, lots of flashes in fact, but I don't think he's been given help by the coaching staff. And I think Clinton Dix regressed under Dom Capers a little bit. I think he'll be helped a lot by the new system. And Mike Daniels and Kenny Clark, 2 great interior linemen. I think they will be helped a lot too by Pettin's system. The one problem I think we may have is our inside linebackers are a little slow. We could have to move Josh Jones inside, and we might have to leave him out at strong safety even, because I don't know if we will keep Morgan Burnett this year. He's up as a free agent. I don't know that we'll re-sign him. I think we have bigger priorities, bigger fish to fry. I think Morgan Burnett's a really good player, but he's getting older, and the money he's going to ask for most likely probably won't be worth it. I would like to keep him, though, because he's been a very consistently good player, and he adds consistency, to be honest. When you have to turn over a lot of a team, it makes it tough. It makes it tough on the team to stay together, And I think that's it. Outside of that, Jimmy G signed a big contract, huge contract, which could be a huge mistake. 7 games and earns the biggest contract in NFL history. I don't know. 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. What is that? That's not good. That's not great. People want to compare him to Kaepernick. He's way out of Kaepernick's level. But is he Rodgers tier? Is he Brady tier? Is he even Breeze? Big Ben? Is he their tier? Probably not. Probably not yet. Was he really good? Yeah, but teams didn't game plan for him. Teams had nothing to game plan for. I think this year you could see him get stopped more often, which was something that didn't happen last year. He did look very, very good, but I would be careful. This could be fool's gold. This could be bad news for the 49ers, but it could also be great news. I think there's something with the Boston teams. There's something with the Boston teams. Danny Ainge and Bill Belichick with the Patriots, they are some evil masterminds. Every trade they do, seemingly, people know they shouldn't trade with the Celtics or the Patriots, and they do it anyway, thinking they get a good deal, and somehow the deal is bad. The Cavs, they get Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, first round pick, Ante Zizic for Kyrie Irving. They're like, well, Isaiah Thomas will be able to replace at least 80% of Kyrie Irving. And now we're getting Jay Crowder, a good defensive player, and a first round pick. And somehow the Brooklyn Nets start winning games. And somehow Isaiah Thomas isn't able to come back fully from the injury. And somehow Jay Crowder regresses immensely. I'd be careful. I'd tread lightly with the Patriots. They do not often get beaten trades. I think they know something everyone else doesn't know about Jimmy Garoppolo. So I would be careful about naming him Jimmy Jesus like people have been. On the MLB front, there have been a lack of signings, a huge lack of signings. Today, Yu Darvish got signed by the Cubs, which was pretty surprising. They went with him over Jake Arrieta. But Jake Arrieta, he did decline last year, but I still think he's a quality pitcher. Nobody's really getting signed this season, though, which is pretty surprising. JD Martinez still out there, Carlos Gonzalez, Carlos Gomez, they're all out there still. Hopefully the Diamondbacks can re-sign JD Martinez. I think their team is looking up this year. Hopefully everyone can stay healthy all year. That was their biggest problem into the playoffs, really. They had tons of injuries, and I don't know that they were able to overcome them against the Dodgers. They obviously weren't. They got swept, sadly, after sweeping them twice during their regular season, killing everyone's hopes. If you couldn't tell, also a Diamondbacks fan, as I live in Arizona, based out of Phoenix, the creator, the place where the Desert Heat title has come from. I think the offseason is good. They've been saying, I've been reading some reports that JD Martinez could actually re-sign with the Diamondbacks, which I think would be great. I think the D-backs could use more power. They could really use Yasmani Tomas sitting on the bench. As much as I like Yasmani Tomas, he's better suited for an AL team. As a DH, he's a good DH. As an outfield player, not so much. But JD Martinez, I've been hearing his agent has not liked the offers. And they're even saying that there could be a stalemate into the playoffs. I mean, not into the playoffs, into the regular season. Which I think would be surprising because JD Martinez shares an agent with some of the other outfielder free agents, like Carlos Gonzalez and Carlos Gomez. And it would be surprising if either of them signed before JD Martinez, because having the same agent, they'd really want JD Martinez to set the market for them so they would be able to make more money, not vice versa. See, if JD Martinez gets signed first, that sets a bigger market, meaning other teams will see that teams are willing to pay a high amount for good hitting outfielders, which I think good hitting is something every team could use, especially home runs nowadays. You see the likes of the Yankees loading up on home run talent, Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. You see people, they're going for the fly ball. It used to be you want to get the grounder, you want to get the line drive, you don't want the ball in the air. Now it's opposite. Strikeouts are okay. And it makes sense in theory when you think about it. Strikeouts, if you strike out, you can't get a double play. If you hit a grounder, then you can get a double play. If you hit a pop fly, even you can get into a double play. So I think the thinking there is, well, 1 out is better than 2 outs, which makes sense. But JD Martinez hopefully signs back with the D-backs. They say if he does sign back with the Diamondbacks, it would be on a 1-year deal, but I think the Diamondbacks know if they can get JD Martinez on a 1-year deal that this would be their year to strike, really. They'd have
they'd have really the last few years, one of the last few years of Zach Greinke. You can tell he was really, really good last year, but he started to tail off a little bit at the end. He went on a pretty good winning streak, but at the end you can see he's losing a little velocity. He has really good control, but especially in the playoffs, it was evident that his end is coming up soon. As for Patrick Corbin, I think he's still a good pitcher. They got that Japanese guy, Yoshi. They got him. He's a relief pitcher, which is something they need. They need it badly. Some of their relief pitchers were just terrible and flat out lost in games. I think bullpen depth is important for obvious reasons, but especially important for the Diamondbacks, I guess, because their bullpen could not stay healthy last year. It really couldn't. It was pretty sad to see, because I think they came out of nowhere last year, and to see them go out like that in the playoffs, I wish they would have put up a better fight. But, you know, you win some, you lose some, and that's just how the game goes. As for college basketball, we can get into a little bit of college basketball before we cut out the show for today. ASU played tonight, as I am an ASU attendee, ASU student. That's something important to me. And they took out UCLA. And you know what? One thing I noticed, I started watching a lot more college basketball since I've been going to ASU. And I hate the NCAA rule set. The NCAA basketball rule set is awful. From what I'm watching, they call the reverse of the way they call fouls in the NBA. The NBA, they won't call non-contact fouls, so say like traveling, double dribble. They won't really call those fouls. They'll call them sometimes, obviously, if they're egregious, but they won't call every single one. In the NCAA, they call every single non-contact foul. There's travelings, there's double dribbles, there's this, there's that. And it's like, dude, could you slow down the game anymore? And then the contact fouls, they call no contact fouls. In the NBA, they call almost all contact fouls. Yeah, well, in the NCAA, it's the opposite. Don't expect to get contact fouls. I mean, I guess that's fine. You want to play the rougher brand of basketball, I guess. And another thing that annoys me a lot, they don't have continuation. Oh, continuation is needed. Watching NBA, why would you go with, you're preparing kids for the NBA, why would you not have rules similar to the NBA? It's kind of setting them up for failure, to be honest. I cannot stand the NCAA rule set, and this is what got on my nerves the most. Tonight I was watching the ASU versus UCLA basketball game, and they're up by like 14 with a minute and a half left, and UCLA just starts fouling them, and I was at a sports bar watching the UCLA game and the UFC fights simultaneously. So I'm looking back and forth, and I swear the last minute and a half, minute and 45 seconds, that took the equivalent of like 1.5 to 2 UFC fights. And I think that's pretty ridiculous. How can a minute and a half last that long? There needs to be a limit on fouls that can, at the end of the game, that can send the other team to the free throw line. You shouldn't be able to just keep doing it constantly. And I know, obviously, if it was my team that won because they kept fouling and the team couldn't make the free throws, I get that. I probably would like that. But I think overall, it stretches the game out, makes it more boring, and honestly, it's just ridiculous to have it like that. How can they just keep fouling? It's terrible. Watching that, was pretty tragic. I do hope that ASU is able to make the NCAA tournament, though. It's something that I would like a lot, because seeing ASU do good in some sport that matters. Sorry, swimming. Sorry, track. I don't know if you're good. Seeing them do something in a sport that matters is fun, and I'd like to go to another game and get crazy in the crowd. Yeah. So that'll wrap it up for the first episode of the Desert Heat Sports Podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again next time. Catch an upload, hopefully in the next week. I'm getting things set up, so I need to get more equipment, obviously. If the sound quality on this episode wasn't great, I'm sorry. I'm starting out. I've been really excited to start this, and I just wanted to start it. I couldn't wait to get the equipment. I just wanted to start it. So hopefully in the next coming week or two, I'll try to upload every Saturday when I have time. I might upload more than that if I can, because there's always lots of news to talk about in sports, but can't always get to it. So I hope to have an upload out every Saturday, and I hope that next episode I will get my packages with better recording equipment in, and I will be able to put out a better quality product for you guys listening. And thanks again. Thanks for listening. Hope to catch you next week. Peace.